Some people think losing a relationship is the most painful thing, but there is a pain quieter than a breakup. It is the moment you realize you've been alive, but not living. This is an unsettling story, not because something terrible happened, but because almost nothing did. And sometimes that is the worst part. Annabelle noticed it suddenly, on a Tuesday night that looked like many evenings before it. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, her phone lighting up her face, reading the same message over and over again. "I'll call you later." It was sent hours ago. The house was silent, not peaceful, but heavy. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your heartbeat, of your breathing, of how alone you feel with your thoughts. She looked into the mirror and for a second didn't recognize the person looking back at her. The question came quietly, but it cut deep. When exactly did I start disappearing?
This is Beyond Stories, where every story carries a lesson, and every lesson touches the heart. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could inspire your next step. Now, let's go deeper into the story.
Annabelle had always been easy to love. At least that's what people said. She was gentle, patient, understanding. She learned early that being good meant not causing trouble, not asking too many questions, not expressing too much emotion. She was praised for being mature, for being reasonable, for being low maintenance. And somewhere along the way, she started believing that love was earned by silencing yourself. When Daniel entered her life, it felt like safety. He had certainty where her voice wavered. He had plans where hers were unclear. He chose her confidently, and that felt good. It felt like being seen. Even when she didn't feel the same spark, she didn't pull away. She answered calls, replied to messages, showed up when expected. Everyone approved, everyone praised him, everyone said she was lucky. And Annabelle, unsure of her own feelings, began to assume they were wrong. At first, the changes were invisible. She let Daniel choose where they ate. She adjusted her schedule to match his. She postponed her interests because his plans felt more important. She called it compromise. She called it adulthood. She called it love. And each time her inner voice whispered, "This isn't you," she quieted it with logic. This is how relationships work. This is what it takes to stay. Months passed and her world grew smaller. Friends stopped inviting her as frequently. Her hobbies faded without announcement. Her opinions became filtered through his preferences. She was present, but not fully. She was there, but not entirely herself. And nobody noticed because from the outside, everything looked fine. The first real crack came quietly. Daniel mentioned a major decision casually, as if her agreement was guaranteed. He outlined plans for the future, for their lives together. Annabelle smiled and nodded, like always, but later that night, lying beside him, staring at the ceiling, she felt a thing break inside her. Not painful enough to scream, not obvious enough to explain, just enough to change the way her heart felt. She tried to imagine the future he saw, but couldn't find herself in it. She was there, but blurred, standing behind his choices, his path, his direction. And for the first time, she felt fear. Not of losing him, but of losing herself completely. The relationship didn't end then. Real stories rarely end when realization begins. Instead, Annabelle grew quieter. She withdrew not in drama, but in distance. Daniel noticed, but didn't understand. He asked why she felt far away. She answered with the same word that had always protected her. "Yes, I'm fine." That word felt heavy in her mouth now, bitter with use. One evening, after another conversation that led nowhere, Annabelle walked home alone. The city buzzed around her, full of people moving with purpose, laughter echoing from restaurants, couples walking hand in hand. She felt invisible, like a passenger in her own life. That night she opened an old notebook, one she hadn't touched in years. Inside were written pieces of herself, dreams she once believed in, hopes she wanted to chase, a life she wanted to make hers. She cried softly, not because the dreams were too ambitious, but because she had left them behind without noticing. She started questioning everything. When had love become about endurance? When had commitment meant silence? When had she learned that choosing herself was wrong? But questioning didn't bring answers. It only brought the painful awareness that she was knowingly staying in something that was emptying her. She considered leaving, but fear held her tight. Fear of being alone, fear of being judged, fear of regret. She imagined explaining herself to friends, family, him. She imagined the confusion, the accusations, the labels, unsure, unready, difficult. And so she stayed, because leaving felt too heavy and staying felt familiar. Nights became longer, mornings felt mechanical. She began to feel a strange weariness, not sleepiness, but exhaustion from pretending. Every "I'm okay" felt like another lie added to the pile. And the worst part wasn't that she was unhappy, it was that she hadn't allowed herself to be anything else. One evening, Daniel asked again, "Why are you so distant?" Annabelle opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. How do you explain that you've been absent from yourself for too long? How do you put words to a feeling you buried years ago? So she said nothing, and silence filled the room, thick and unforgiving. Later, alone again, Annabelle sat on the floor, her back against the wall, and realized something that hurt more than any argument. She hadn't lost a relationship, she had lost herself while trying to preserve one. And now she was trapped between fear and truth. The days continued, the messages came and went, life continued from the outside, but inside, Annabelle carried a regret that grew heavier with each passing moment. Not a regret about Daniel, not entirely, but a regret about herself, about all the times she shrank, about all the times she said yes when she should have paused, about all the moments she silenced her needs because it was more comfortable for others. And that is where the story ends, not with clarity, not with healing, not with a brave new beginning, but with Annabelle sitting in quiet reflection, aware of what she sacrificed, unsure if she has the courage to reclaim it. Now listen closely, because the story may end here, but the lesson begins now. This story is not about villains or heroes. It is about choices. It is about what happens when you enter a relationship without first knowing who you are. It is about the danger of confusing peace with silence and love with endurance. It is about how constantly choosing others can slowly teach you to abandon yourself. If you do not choose yourself first, you will spend your life adjusting to spaces that were never built for you. If you do not learn to sit with your truth, you will accept comfort that slowly drains you. And if you do not listen to that quiet voice inside you, it will eventually become regret. Stay with this story, because sometimes the saddest endings are the ones that look calm, and sometimes the most important lesson is learning when to stop saying yes.